be talking about the new security paradigms. One of the new one. There is a new paradigm called ZeroTrust security since 2013. After the Snowden, White House issued an order changing all the things that we have known that they have been applying to the security field so far. So I will be talking about using Docker for ZeroTrust security. Hi everyone. You can hear me, right? Let me first start with thanking all the people who organized this event, and I had a great chance to meet with the people, great skilled people here, and we had a lunch an hour or so ago, and we have talked about how interaction with the audience is very low. All right, so, and I came up with the idea of picking one of the attendees and kidnap him and get his or her laptop formatted with Windows XP. All right, let's start with picking that lucky person. All right, I will ask a couple questions. If you can raise your hands. How many of you are from Vilnius area? All right. How many of you can speak or understand Turkish? I'm from Turkey. So how many of you know or use honeypots in their environment? None. All right, good. All right. First, let me start with introducing myself. My name is Kayra Otaner. I have been using Linux since 1994. I'm a huge Gen 2 and Linux from scratch fan. I have the badge ID. Not sure if I have the thing over here. I'm the author of very first PHP and MySQL book written in Turkish. This is me with Rasmus. Back in 2001, San Francisco Apache conference. And I'm a chief architect for Turkish Navy's open source IT security project called Octopus in English. Turkish is Ahtapot. I lived in New York City for about 12 years. So the second, plane hitting World Trade Center live, and worked as a IT administrator over there, director of IT operations. I'm co-founder of Datascala. It's a big data solutions company in Turkey. I'm a father of 2 and Istanbul admirer. Those are my LinkedIn profiles and Twitter links. You know why I put this page over here, this photo over here? It was taken in 2001. It has been over almost like 16 years. That tells me 2 things. First, I am very old, but at least I'm not 72 like some of the other speakers. But I may have some wisdom to share with you, apart from the technical things. The very first motto that I typically use in all of my presentations is this quote, all right? It explains why we are having these seminars within 30 minutes. The person who knows how will always have a job. The person who knows why will always be in charge. There's a variation of it. All right, those who know how will always work for those who know why. So we cannot talk how to use the technical details of how to use Docker for this paradigm, but we can talk about why we should be using it and the certain mechanics about using Docker. All right, I use this slide almost in all of my presentations. All right, when the subject is utilizing Docker to create MicroPerimeter for ZeroTrust security, we have to start with defining what ZeroTrust is, and also we have to define what MicroPerimeter is. I have 40 slides, 30 minutes, and I have as an added bonus, I have 10 more slides to go if we have chance to talk about some more from my perspective what DevOps and SecOps are. Let's start with explaining what ZeroTrust is and history behind it. How many of you heard about ZeroTrust? Couple guys only, and you guys are the lucky ones that will be their laptop formatted as Windows XP. All right, that's good though. ZeroTrust is a relatively new paradigm. All right, but before we coming to the time that it was released, we have to look back certain amount of history and talk about why we have ZeroTrust paradigm right now. You most probably heard of Bruce Schneier, which is one of the prominent IT security gurus. He has been consulted by the Congress, U.S. Congress, And he has this code. He says, you cannot defend, you cannot prevent. The only thing you can do is to detect and respond. All right. So it essentially acknowledging the fact that you will be hacked, you will be penetrated, your network will not be completely under control. So you have to live with that fact. And around the same time that Bruce Schneier said that, you know CERT, right? CERT, Cyber Emergency Response Team, CERT. How many of you heard CERT? Very low interaction. All right, good enough. I'm not sure if you have noticed it. CERT definition changed from Cyber Emergency Response Team to Cyber Emergency Readiness Team. You know what that tells us? That tells us that you will be hacked too. All right, just like US entities. These happen around the time that Snowden and around the time that the F-35's plans were hijacked from Pentagon. In 2007, if you remember, around 50 terabytes of data worth of 600 billion US dollars, 600 billion US dollars worth of plans, blueprints of F-35, 50 terabytes in 2007. Remember those times, you didn't have any USBs that you can carry 50 terabytes. You have to pass it through the firewalls. Was stolen by certain countries, right? And after that, after seeing that, what we have been doing through all these times was not working, US government issued actually Obama administration issued an executive order. Essentially, he says, whatever we have been doing should be changed. We should find a new paradigm, and it's ordered as an executive order by the White House. Its number is 13636. All right. So this executive order required NIST, which is National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US, to find a good approach, good method to eliminate the mistakes that we have been doing, right? They consulted so many think tanks, and they picked the one that has been around since 2005. It's from Forrester Research, called ZeroTrust Paradigm. All right. So it effectively tells you that there is no trust zones in your network. Think about the conventional firewall or conventional network topology. You have a firewall, you have untrust network outside, and you have trust network inside. Your databases, web servers, applications are sitting inside your trust zone. So this Zero Trust Paradigm eliminates the concept of having a trust zone. There's no trusted LAN, VLAN, segment, whatever you call it. I'm not going to go into too much details about the whole Zero Trust Paradigm. We will give you brief info about the Zero Trust layers. It actually sits on top of 5 different layers. The first one is all resources are accessed in a secure manner regardless of location. That means have SSL even behind your firewall, right? Don't consider, hey, this is a database server. I'm not going to be, I don't want to have the SSL overhead on that system. Use SSL wherever you can. Technically, if it's technically possible, do it. Access control is on a need-to-know basis and strictly enforced. This has been around for a very long period of time, but there's an emphasis on it. So certain systems administrators needs to be, only limited number of people needs to manage the service, but also whenever they are on job, they should be able to reach. So for example, if you go to a vacation for 2 weeks, your system administration rights, root privileges should be revoked when you're not at the office, when you're not available for online. So there's a time and privilege credentials to combine together so that you can only access with root privileges or system privileges whenever you are on job. There's a saying in English, it's called verify, trust but verify. So there's they play with it and say verify and never trust. Always check and double check what's going on inside your network, but don't ever trust. Here, these two are very important from our perspective, for this session's perspective. It asks you inspect and log all traffic. What that means? Do you know what that means? It may mean 2 things. Have all the net flows recorded, recorded for your environment, and or having full packet capture throughout your network. because it doesn't say just inspect. It says inspect and log all traffic. And also it says that the network is designed from the inside out. I'm not going to go into too much details about it. But these are the 5 pillars of Zero Trust. From this definition, you may have understand certain things, but so what is actually Zero Trust is from Linux perspective. It essentially acknowledges the fact that conventional firewalls and IDS/IPS systems that only protects MicroPerimeter from outside are not enough. So you have firewalls outside, but you go free and naked inside your network. So you cannot just have MicroPerimeter protected. This looks very similar to this metaphor. And I asked why, if you are from Vilnius area. I took the city tour yesterday, and it took like 1 hour 20 minutes to see around the city. And I heard that there was a wall surrounding the city that was constructed a couple hundred years ago, right? And I'm from Istanbul, and there is a steel wall protecting the city against invaders, right? How relevant is that right now? So think about your day-to-day life right now. What is the likelihood of someone invading Vilnius? But first, they can attack from the air, so the walls are not relevant. But also, what is the likelihood of you seeing a tank attacking you versus a terrorist blowing up a suicide jacket? Think about it. Security paradigm has shifted from regular armies attacking you versus a rapist, a criminal, sick-minded people. I don't want to give names. There are so many of them attacking you in your home, right next to your home. So it's not regular types of attacks. It looks similar to the Zero Trust. There are certain similarities between Zero Trust paradigm and this. You cannot have regular armies protecting your city. You have to have certain different types of security measures built into the civil security forces. So I use the term invaders because attackers used to deface your website, right? Changing the website with hacked by this team or whatever, or deface with some stupid XXX pictures, right? Nowadays it's not the case. They sneak into your network. They stay there 4 months, 6 months, just like the sleeping cells do in our modern day terrorist organizations, right? They are inside your network because you are not looking at carefully. You cannot see that that person living right next to you is going to attack someone in airport. So it's exactly the same with the Zero Trust paradigm. Don't trust. I'm not talking about the inter-individual relations, but in the network world, don't trust any single host, any single IP address, MAC address, anything sitting inside your network, and always be suspicious. So technically speaking, Zero Trust, not sure if you can see it. Oh, you can. All right, we used to have trusted VLAN and a firewall protecting us from outside world, and we have a switch, say VLAN 99. Web 1 application was talking to Web 2. Throughout the switch, there's a layer 2 switch, right? It was only letting certain packages go through, certain ports maybe. Zero Trust says you have to have the firewall passing and inspecting certain traffic that is passing within the same VLAN, inter-VLAN traffic, right? This is called focusing on lateral movements and removing trusted VLAN. There's a lateral movement between these two, and we can inspect that traffic. But what if we can even bring firewall closer to the application and wrap it around the application so tightly there is no space for the attackers to invade? So you have the firewall sitting right next to the application, so tight, and all other security measures that you can have, that you cannot have attackers possibly fitting inside that zone, that gap. And that's what we were talking about. It used to be called jail, now it's container, right? So we wrap around the security measures, defensive measures around the application, and not just having the firewall function, but also other features, and protect the network. actually protect the application. So the Zero Trust Paradigm wants you to have both micro and macro visibility of your network, right? That is essentially having a 360 degrees view of your network all the time. We sometimes call this situational awareness, or we call it network situational awareness, or in short, NETSA. I have this funny cartoon that shows the importance of the 360 degrees view. So you have an attacker attacking, but because you are an owl, you look behind it, and it doesn't work the way that it was supposed to be. So you have to be careful if you're attacking an owl from behind. All right. As a security researcher, I always follow certain teams. Have you heard of NSA's Power Team? Rob Joyce? One person? No person? Single? No? All right. NSA Tower Division is Tailored Access Operations. So if you want to listen to Merkel, right, those are the teams. And Rob Joyce, this gentleman here, is their head of chief hacker. It's called chief hacker for NSA. He gave us presentation on January 2016. He essentially said, these are the things that we do to achieve and gain access to certain high priority VIP individuals. They are not after you. They're not after common people. They're after like very high profile people. So they are the guys who have the arsenal of every secret weapon that NSA has been developing. So he essentially says, we hunt sysadmins. They don't go and try to find a vulnerability within the system. They attack from the behind. They hunt 5 guys who has the root access to those servers. So Zero Trust asks you to limit the privileges of those sysadmins. And the most important sentence, which is not written in those slides, you can see this. You can find this on online YouTube. It's very like 30 minutes or so. On 29th minute, he says, consider you are already penetrated. So by default, as a systems administrator, you think that my systems are already secure. I already have the patches deployed. I have this IDS logs, whatever, blah blah. Your default behavior is to assume that you are safe. There is no one inside it. But experience or last 6 couple years shows us that it's very likely that you have someone listening, sitting in your network, and having stealing your data or whatever their goals are. So you have to, by default, you have to think in terms of like you are already penetrated, and you have to look for that person or symptoms of the attack in your network all the time. That should be your default motto or motivation. And he also says, our worst nightmare, from their perspective, their worst nightmare is an out-of-band network tap, a device that monitors your network activity and produces logs that can record anomalous activity, plus a smart systems administrator who actually reads the logs and pays attention to what it says. So in a regular day-to-day life and operation of a system, systems administrators are very usually overwhelmed with the logs and etc. So you have to find ways to automate and be smarter than your opponent. All right. In order to protect our systems, we have to start with the definition of what our systems are and how to protect them. I'm gonna go into the detail, go very quick on it because we don't have too much time. But this definition of system has changed actually pivoted a lot of times within the last 10 years. If you ask Google what a system is, you get this definition, which is very easy. A set of things working together as parts of a mechanism or an interconnected network as a complex whole. So it used to be a stupid bare metal application and a server, an application, a single monolithic application sitting on it, right? Directly connected to the internet. And time passed. Now we have multiple different roles and tier applications. We have a web server and a database server, 2 different machines, one switch, and it goes directly to the outside. There was no firewall. Firewalls were sitting on the servers. This was back in 1999, 2000. I remember those days. Then security, became important, and we started putting firewalls right? Firewalls around our applications or our systems so that we can protect it. Just like building the walls, protect it from the invaders. Then the time passed. We started noticing that even though we have firewalls, people are still penetrating it. So we added this IDS system that gets a network span from the switch that is at the interjunction of that data that is passing through. But you get the spam from this switch that only listens to either this green line or these lines. Usually these switches are not smart enough to have multiple LANs to be converging to one. And time passed. We have an IDS system listening to the same switch, and also a syslog NetFlow full packet capture infrastructure for highly critical infrastructure I'm talking about, getting collected at some point somewhere. But the problem with this approach is that the intercommunication between web server and database server, which is what we call lateral movements, was not visible. So it was the blind spot for IDS, for full packet capture. Anything related to the network situation awareness, there was so many blind spots. So you were not looking at 360 degrees, you were looking at 180 degrees. You were looking on the front or back or certain other degrees, but you were not getting the complete picture. So with the introduction of the hypervisors or virtualization, we have this VMware or Zen or whatever, or Hyper-V. Sitting here, you have the web server and database server in a hypervised environment, and you have the vSwitch, and it's trunked to switch. It goes to firewall to the internet, but you have the span listening only this part, not listening here. So with the introduction of the hypervisors, essentially, or virtualization, we lost further visibility, which wasn't already there, right? We lost even further because there are so many things that are sitting on one single bare metal hardware with a huge amount of RAM, and not seeing these lateral movements. There are so many different types of attacks that can gain access to web server through the, say, rack, remote, out of band management ports, or like through some other ways of coming here. And they were doing lateral jumps between the web server and database servers and others. You were not seeing it over here. But with the ZeroTrust paradigm and with utilizing Docker in a smarter way, we can have, instead of having a hypervisor, we can still have it as a host, but we can have Docker providing us features that were not easily available before, like IDS sitting right next to the application, and NetFlow PCAP capturing facility, full packet capture, sitting right next to your application. A honeypot, we will talk about this later, sitting right next to your application, on a separate host maybe, but still right in the same layer. So this is what we call MicroPerimeter, having perimeters so tight and right next to the application that you can get almost 360 degrees view. And metaphorically speaking, I think this looks like, if you think about like 100 years or so ago, you have a big building like a movie theater or a mosque or a church or a synagogue or whatever. You have to heat up whole building in order to heat the people inside it, right? You didn't have technology to direct the heat source towards people, so you have to heat it up, heat whole building up, and that created a lot of waste of energy, and it wasn't efficient. But nowadays, if you look around, there are so many smart heating appliances that directs heat towards people, so you don't have to heat the whole building or whole stadium. So you just heat the people and don't waste energy to heat up whole building. So that's what we are doing with Docker. Instead of protecting the macro perimeter, spending time not being efficient and still having a lot of blind spots, we are protecting what is more important for us, people or the application itself. So we direct the heat source towards the application, protect it, encapsulate it, and wrap it around so tight, and don't waste time on protecting macro. We can still use, we can still protect, but don't focus on it. Focus on the application itself and protect it. All right, there are two very interconnected concepts. One of them is called Docker security. Other one is security with Docker, right? My perspective is using Docker for security. So it's using Docker as a security method. Docker security, I'm going to talk about that later, but security with Docker is mostly understood as an application segmentation. So you have applications only listening port 80, not listening anything else, very limited namespace. That's not good enough. But effective use of Docker platforms, by using it, we can eliminate the IDS blind spots, just like I showed with the previous slides. We can do smarter log collection. We can collect the log whenever they happen on the network layer rather than having the configuration. We can have full packet capture to the fullest. No single byte or bit can escape from IDS, right? Flow collection to the fullest. And high interaction honeypots. I asked if you know honeypots before. There was no one, right? There was one single person, gentleman over there. So there are two types of honeypots. I'm going to talk about that later. This is Docker, security with Docker, right? But Docker security means, which we are not going to talk about. We haven't been talking about. More focused on container image, official or not, replacing RPMs and devs as a means of packaging, and securing that image, getting the vulnerabilities patched, checking, the namespace and privileges. Just for your reference, I put two links. One of them is seccomp. This is the technology underneath Docker, having the namespaces. In Linux kernel, there are close to around 50 capabilities, all right? Bind a file system, listen to network, have a root privilege, send, use memory, whatever. So these names, these capabilities are grouped together as a namespace, and you can test this using seccomp tool. This has been around since 2000, 2005 or whatever. And also check the Linux capabilities. This is for Docker security. If you want to have your Docker images secured in a very professional fashion, you have to check these links. Very, very simple, very easy. And also having containers as a means of transport eliminates the needs of having boxes as a protection facility. The term is used, boxes are, a box lobby or appliance lobby told us to buy boxes. Get this firewall box. It's really going to have all these UTM features that you will need, right? So I have this joke. If you have containers, you don't need boxes. Do you get it? No? Boxes, containers. I tried this in Turkish. It didn't work that way too. Then too. So don't worry about it. So focusing on protecting the application versus the OS or the environment is the two key features that we have been talking about. So some practical advices, all right? More common line stuff. Utilize TCP dump -c, which is compressed and have a certain buffer, rotating pcap, as a separate container sitting on the host, listening the bridge that you create for your Docker, all right? That can do, say, 10 gigs of full packet capture, overriding the oldest one all the time. Have that ready, have that deployed, have that up and running. Very simple. No need to go into details, right? All right. NFPCAPD. Any one of you guys using NetFlow? Let me see hands. None? Just two? Couple of guys? You know NetFlow tools, NF tools? Couple of guys? Perfect. There is a hidden utility over there. NFPCAPD. So direct dump of NetFlow files, flow record files to the disk by listening to the network. So instead of having a network collection point and send the NetFlow data to a collector and record it remotely, you can right on the same Docker host, you can record NetFlow data by just listening, just like the way that you do with the TCP dump. Record locally on the disk and then ship it to somewhere else. Have the packet beat, Elasticsearch, all right? Have that deployed on a privilege mode on your system that can decode so many, I guess close to 10 commonly used protocols: web, HTTP, not HTTPS, HTTP, Mongo, Redis, MySQL, right? Have that deployed as a container right next to your application, and then get that shipped to Elasticsearch, all right? It's very easy. Deploy real IDS systems sitting right next to your application as well as a separate container. Again, Suricata or Snort as an IDS role sitting right next to your application. This is very important. Deploy your real application containers in a separated environment and create your own high interaction honeypot environment. There are two types of honeypots: low interaction, high interaction. Low interaction ones are the ones that barely mimics the protocol. Say MySQL, it understands basic MySQL protocol, responds in a stupid fashion, right? Or HTTP, or certain applications like Drupal, or like Joomla. There are certain honeypots that you can deploy right onto your network. These are low interaction. Attackers can easily understand, oh, this is a honeypot, I'm not going to touch it. It may be too late, but still it's not going to go too far. High interaction firewalls mimics the real application capabilities you already have, right? Have that sitting in your environment, just like you have with the dev, QA, prod, pre-prod, stage, and have the honeypot network. Have your application deployed the way that you deploy your production, but have maybe like 2 versions before. Have the attacker attack and all that security defensive measures you have, full packet capture, net flow, blah, blah, having that on that environment ready, so you capture attackers before they go deeper into your network. Without having this, you cannot have zero trust. So DevOps, have you heard of SecOps? No one? Just a couple guys? Perfect. DevOps, most people know. I have some take on it, but if you have time, I'm gonna go through that too. SecOps is having the infrastructure operate in a secure fashion, and also has certain security tools or arsenal, I call, built into your release management cycle. So you deploy your app with the IDS attached to it. You deploy your app with the log collection and honeypots attached to it, right? They are all combined together. It's not just DevOps. DevOps usually taught as a development practice, but without security, you will have a lot of problems. Not just the feature set that you should be focusing on, with the wide acceptance of whatever the application that you are deploying. Security is going to come to you one day or another. Shania said, security, seize the moment, 5 minutes, all right. Security is something that you cannot implement afterwards. You have to design from scratch, all right? So far we have been talking about application segmentation and Dockers and containers. There is a certain momentum in the proprietary world. Cisco has released a tool called Tetration Analytics, right, in June 2016, and they launched a newer version, February 2017, a couple months ago. It is gaining momentum, but let me tell you this, with the proper use of Docker and the tools that I've described to you, you can have much more granular visibility than any proprietary tool can provide, and also you're going to save $3 million in your pocket. All right? So I have 10 more slides, or I can have questions, Q&A, whichever you go, whichever you choose. Any questions? You want me to continue? All right. So you have heard a lot of mumbo jumbo about what DevOps is, right? If you ask Google, just the very first page, 6 out of 10 results says what DevOps is. It doesn't give you even description because there is no single consensus on what DevOps is, right? Type DevOps, 6 results. What is DevOps? Is DevOps this or that? Whatever that is. But if you ask Google, very simple, what information security is, right? It gives you information security is this. It knows the definition. There is a consensus on it, right? If you ask what system is, it gives you a definition, knows. If you ask cloud computing, you get the result. So DevOps, to me, is very vaguely stated concept, all right? So it is designed or understood mostly as from a developer's perspective, as a tool to make developers' lives easier, right? I assume that most of you guys are developers, from typing applications, developing applications, Python, Go, Java, whatever. Whatever makes the life of a developer easier usually makes the life of a systems administrator harder. And I am from that camp. Right? I'm a systems administrator for about 15 years. So the things that makes your life easier makes my life harder. My take on definition of DevOps is this, from systems administrator perspective. Building systems that manages other systems so that I don't need to do manual administration of 10,000 other systems or management, release management, or patching, whatever, right? So the SecOps, its sister concept, is building systems that securely builds other systems and keeps them secure so that I don't need to do it using manual human power, right? SecOps and DevOps, from my perspective, DevOps is very vague, build systems that manages 10,000 other systems. SecOps is have that same and also keep them secure all the time and have it deployed in secure, safest fashion. All right, I'm not gonna go into these. All right, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for the first part, and now we're moving to the questions and answers. And I saw a question on this side. Okay.
Hi there.
Hi.
So to me, it seems like you're describing a concept that's very similar to defense and death.
Correct.
So it's basically the same thing.
Yeah,
Or are there any differences?
ZeroTrust is based on defense in depth. It's called, Advanced Person Threat (APT) and Advanced Person Defense (APD). What we are describing here is having this constant effort to make the system secure and safe all the time. Yeah, so there are different names, but ZeroTrust has more traction. The reason for it is an executive order and cybersecurity framework developed in US and having wide acceptance, that just like with Cisco. They call it Tetration Analytics for Zero Trust Networking. Right?
We have one more question here.
Now, I've seen that you use Docker for this concept, security with the Docker. So in this system, the Docker becomes itself as the weakest link, yes? So at least from a certain point of view, no. But still, you have to harden Docker in certain ways, yes? So you mentioned this.
Yeah, it's called
security.
Docker security, yeah.
And do you put a lot of effort into this one? Because I assume you build the real systems with the Docker.
Yes, there are some best practices that are deployed all over the place. There is even a tool on GitHub that checks best practice against Docker. If I remember correctly, Docker dashboard, if I'm not mistaken. You can check your basically essentially having your host OS hardened enough for Docker containerization. There are always 0 days and attack surfaces, even with the design of this type of a system, right? That's the Docker security, and application can have issues. But having a security with Docker is a different concept. That's what we have talked about over here. So you have to have both of them go hand in hand. You're right. Any more questions?
We have like 10 minutes left, so
Really?
discussions, questions, answers, ideas, offers.
I can tell you a joke if you like. You want the joke? All right. These two guys goes to African jungle, all right? They start walking in the jungle and they see cheetah, which is the fastest animal in the world, right? They see the cheetah running towards them. One of the guys sees the cheetah and starts running, trying to run away, right? The other guy is a sports guy. He removes his backpack, and from the backpack he removes his running shoes. He starts tying them up. And the guy who started running like two seconds before, he says, "Are you stupid? Are you going to be able to? Do you think that you can able to overrun, go faster than cheetah? It's the fastest animal in the world, right?" The guy tying his shoes says, "I don't have to run faster than cheetah. I have to run faster than you." Right? So when you think about security, you have to be smart. You cannot overrun your opponent because they are smarter, they're faster. Right? You have to be smart and walk around the actual issue. Identify it correctly. Use honeypots. All right? Use Docker. Don't try to prevent or build huge walls for an unlikely tank attack against Vilnius. Not sure if it happens or not.
Maybe questions now?
There are no more jokes. That's it.
Okay, no more jokes. I wanted to offer one follow-up joke, but okay, there. Give me a second. I'm running.
Thank you. My question is, in your own opinion, using Docker as a security measure for your applications and so on, do you think this technology is maybe a bit too early in its stage? For example, with latest vulnerabilities with it, for like privilege escalation we had recently.
You know the time that the capabilities were added to Linux kernel? 1998. What Docker uses are capabilities, those around 50 capabilities. Docker makes it usable to the masses, makes it easier, because you don't want to go into details of those capabilities and try to understand. I don't want to go through, right? I can, but I don't want to spend time, because Docker makes it easier. It adds another layer, possibly a vulnerability surface, but the technology has been there for a very long period of time, right? It's not an invention, a new thing. It used to be called jail before, or chroot environment, right? Or somewhat similar other terms were used. So essentially, by using the tools that I've described, seccomp, secure computing tool, you can identify what privileges your exact application needs within the container image that you are running. So the proper use is very important. The best practice have been, we have been developing best practice for the last 3-4 years. So in that sense, it's not mature yet, as if compared to the other stuff, but to me, it's the way to go for having a real MicroPerimeter built into your application. So direct the heat source towards the people, not heat up the whole place. That's the concept.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Oh, come on. You don't ask questions. Speakers don't get to ask questions. I'm going to format your laptop with Windows XP then, if it's an odd question.
Sorry, and in your experience, is it easy to make the security team the friends of developers? Because in our experience, the security is sitting in other building, and they never speak to developers. Just only in the last time, in the time of release, they say we don't allow to use this, and it's okay. And they don't give their expertise to the developers. And do you see in your practice such a situation?
That's somewhat called segregation of duties. That's somewhat necessary sometimes. You have to segregate duties of an auditor from the guy who does the actual job. You have to have them sitting not next to each other, but having them involved in your procedures and cycles, meetings, etc. is necessary. And what we are describing here is having SecOps built into your DevOps infrastructure makes the lives of developers and system administrators easier, because from the start, you start deploying your IDS, right? You don't have to add it. From the start, you have to add those. There is a friction, of course. Developers and system administrators don't go that along, right? And security guys even worse.
Yes, but do you see in real life such a situation when security and developers and operations working together? I never see it in real life.
It's a very romantic goal that everyone chases. Didn't happen in my career so far, but we have to push.
Okay, thank you.
Push. That's the way to go.